let me set the stage for the conversation that we'll have here tonight. Congressman Brady, you have represented this district since 1997. Your specialty is tax policy, but that's not the topic that has most of us distressed today. The first major concern that we have is Obamacare, especially the vote coming in the next few weeks to defund it in the continuing resolution. After the 2010 elections, we heard from House Republicans that controlling only one leg of the stool, only the House and not the Senate and not the White House, meant that no good legislation could be passed, and that we could, by implication, only stop bad legislation. Your fantastic Obamacare chart illustrated the smothering, convoluted insanity that would be our new healthcare system, and it helped galvanize the country against it. Yet here we are, hearing feedback from your multiple town halls that your answer is to repeal Obamacare, and that you have moved away from defunding it. You're one of only 2 Republican congressmen in Texas who's declined to co-sponsor H.R. 2682, the House Defund Obamacare Act of 2013 by Representative Tom Graves, the counterpart to Senator Cruz's bill. There's a vote coming up to defund Obamacare, and on that vote, we stand with Ted Cruz, and we ask that you stand with us. Sadly, the likelihood of repealing Obamacare is the same likelihood that any of your good tax bills would be signed into law. We'd have to have a different president for that to happen. As chair of the Subcommittee on Health on the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, we are convinced that you full well appreciate what a catastrophe Obamacare would be for our country. At this point, the best way to keep this monstrosity from taking root is to defund it, as you recommended 2 years ago. Senator Jim DeMint, now president of the Heritage Foundation, says this continuing resolution vote to defund Obamacare is the last best chance that we have to stop it. One final point on this topic. Obamacare is not pro-life. It puts bureaucrats in charge of who gets treatment and what kind of treatment they can receive. Congressman, voting to let it advance runs counter to your pro-life record. Now, the other critical topic on which we see you being able to take action is immigration. John McCain, one of the instigators of this potential disaster, recently stated that the combination of Obamacare and McCain's own horrible immigration bill would actively disadvantage American citizens seeking employment in their own country. Employers of guest workers created by McCain's bill would not be subject to the Obamacare requirement to provide insurance or pay a fine. Any American citizen will be, by acts of our benevolent Congress, any American citizen would be more expensive to hire than any non-citizen guest worker. But illegal aliens are not your constituents. Illegal aliens, who you reclassify as guest workers, are not your constituents. We American citizens are. Your duty as a member of our government of the people is to us. First, last, always. Any excuse to pass any immigration bill out of the House and into conference will be used by the Democrats to ram the Senate's bill through. The Senate Democrats have publicly stated they intend to immediately agitate for the expedited full voting rights citizenship for current illegal aliens. Congressman, you should have no alignment whatsoever with them on this, their true goal. So you should not enter into any sort of discussion with them at all. The answer is no. The answer is not negotiable. Therefore, there's no need for any negotiation. topics will surely come up, Syria, other things, during the course of our conversation tonight, and we deeply appreciate this opportunity to share these with you. As always, we expect and anticipate that questions and comments will be offered in a respectful manner. For those who want to speak, we'll have a microphone down this aisle and down that aisle. You can line up and ask your question. Please state your name and briefly state your question so we can move through as many people as possible. Congressman, thank you very much for being here tonight. We look forward to hearing your thoughts. With that, please help me welcome Congressman.
Thank you for being here today, Julie. Thanks for the invitation to be here, and the openness the Tea Party always has to me, whether we agree or not, and mostly we do. Still, you're always willing to meet with me. And as you know, one of the best decisions my wife and I made was to never move to Washington. We live here in the Woodlands. We're raising our 2 boys here. And the reason I commute to work each week, while we have nearly 2 million miles flying back and forth, I've just finished my 4th round trip to the moon, commuting back and forth, is I never want to get caught up in that bubble in Washington. I want to stay close to the neighbors and communities and families that I represent. And as a result, the reason I do more than 50 town hall meetings a year is to hold myself accountable to you, who I work for. So thank you. We may not always agree on every issue. I think that's almost impossible. But you're going to get a chance always to tell me to my face why you disagree and ask for my explanation. I think that's what's missing in Washington, that type of accountability. So thank you again for having me here tonight. Let's start on these issues in reverse order. Immigration. So what's wrong with immigration today? One, we have a leaky border. That's a security risk where we drive costs up for local school districts and law enforcement. In healthcare, we have not shut the back door of illegal immigration, which is where we have to start. Secondly, we have businesses that work hard to hire legal workers, competing against companies that don't hire legal workers, and that's unfair. And finally, when we do have guest worker programs, when we do have visas and citizenship, we prioritize people by who they know, their relatives in this country, rather than what their commitment is to America to make us stronger. Because at the end of the day, this is not about immigration. This is about America. Every policy ought to make us stronger. Every solution ought to make us stronger. That's immigration. The Senate bill, Gang of 8, that legislation is wrong. I'm not supporting it, period. So let's fix that right now. And it's wrong in all the key areas. One, it doesn't secure the border. You've heard me say you got to close the back door of illegal immigration, so you keep open the front door of legal immigration. So people who want to come here and contribute to America, welcome. But you got to come in the front door, legally, the right way. The Gang of 8 legislation doesn't close that back door. Congressional Budget Office estimates it could stop only 50% of those coming across the border illegally today. Think about it. All that solution, billions of dollars, that whole 1,000-page bill, all that's in there, and you only solved half the problem. Which means if we don't secure the border, I don't know who's going to be in the Tea Party 15 years from now, and I don't know who your representative will be, but they'll be here again asking, what are we going to do about illegal immigration? So we got to solve the problem. The Senate bill doesn't. Look how long it takes, not just in border security, but in that bill, one of the key things today is that companies don't have to, or don't have accurate information to make sure they're only hiring legal workers. So you've always got that magnet for folks that come across the border. The Senate bill gives the government 10 years, a decade, before it gives local businesses an e-verify system that they can easily and accurately check. That's unacceptable. Almost half of those who are here illegally today have come here on a visa, a work visa, a student visa. They came into the front door. They chose to overstay that visa. In the Senate bill, the program that tracks them to insist that they leave when their visa is over, they give them 10 years to do that. That's unacceptable too. The bill on border security includes waiver upon waiver upon waiver by the same White House that's done the same thing for Obamacare. So are you going to trust them not to do waivers to everybody in this game of 8? And then finally, they don't independently verify that the border is secure. I don't trust this government to tell me that's supposed to secure the border, to tell you and me that the border is secure. That's the first problem with the gang of 8 bill. It does not close the back door of illegal immigration. Secondly, it picks its workforce. My view is, one, we have to have the type of workforce, the type of workers that allows us to continue to be the strongest economy in the world. But today, same thing. In that bill, they basically let Washington and unions decide who comes in to work in America. It seems to me first, we ought to train up American workers. We have 20 million people who can't find a full-time job. One, let's train up the American citizens who are here first. Second, there's going to be gaps. I mean, there are in construction, there are in ag, we all know it. We're not filling those jobs, and on the very, very high skilled in America, we've got some gaps there too until we can train up our people. We just do. So I want those gaps to be filled not by Washington and not by the AFL-CIO telling us who we can bring in. I want the free market and the economy to determine that, because at the end of the day, that's what committing to America is. I mean, we want the right workers to fill in those gaps. Final point, I believe citizenship should be reserved for those who come in the front door of legal immigration. Do you agree? And so what is this solution? Let me ask you this. You know what the problems of immigration today? How many of you think everything's working fine, no need to change it? Second, here's a tough one. Honestly, how many of you think we're going to deport 11 million who are here? Honestly. Okay. So here's the question. Hold on. Here's my thought. Our principles, and I always start with principles on any of these issues. One, first principle, the House is not going to pass or take up the gang of 8. We're not going to take up a 1,000, 2,000 page bill. We're going to take it step by step, and it's going to be border security first, border security second, and border security third. It has to be that way. We're going to take up first a bill by Michael McCall from here in Texas, from our region, that not only secures the border, 100% monitoring, 90% apprehension and return, but maybe more importantly, it's not the government that tells us it's secure. Michael McCall has an individual, independent group to tell us when that border is secure. Until we do that, I'm telling you that this is no solution. It's got to be border security first. Secondly, there's another legislation proposed to help fill in the gap on workers, again, in the House, different from the Senate bill that I think goes to the heart of free market. Again, encouraging people who want to commit to America should have the highest priority. Finally, I said before, and I mean it, I think there has to be consequences for those who choose to come in the back door of illegal immigration. Every day, our staff can tell you, we work with people who spend years, thousands of dollars, and I don't know how much time, trying to come in the right way. They wait for years outside this country. You know, they struggle to do it. And they want to be citizens. They want to contribute. They want to commit to America. You can't allow a shortcut. You can't allow others to go to the front of the line ahead of those who spent years trying to do it the right way. And so I think, one, if we are not going to deport citizens or illegal immigrants, excuse me, and if we are not going to create a pathway to citizenship, which the gain of 8 bill does, at most, we should consider a pathway to legal status without citizenship, without voting rights, and without federal benefits. I mean, if you're serious about contributing to America, you don't come here so you can get the federal benefits. Agreed? And Julie, one thing widely misunderstood is that if the House passes any bill, that means we will go to conference automatically. That's not the case. When we pass a border security bill, we will not go to conference. We will not have a vote to do that in order to negotiate a major gain of 8 type legislation. It's already been announced by the Speaker. It's supported almost unanimously by the House Conference. And so until we can get this policy right and the solution right, we're not going to negotiate on these issues. Let's go to Obamacare. And let me clear one thing up. And really, if you don't listen to anything else I say, just one thing you need to know. No one in this room wants to stop Obamacare more than I do. Not anyone in this room. I've been in this fight from day one. Obamacare started in the Ways and Means Committee under Charlie Brown. We got that, but you weren't with me when we got the legislation, 1,000 and some pages, at midnight the night before the vote, and a 300-page amendment hours before we were to vote. In that committee, when every amendment we put down from every member of Congress should be under Obamacare, Democrats voted down. They said, quote, we want choices. We want choices, but no one else in America gets choices. Our amendment to exempt small businesses, why should any business have to offer government-approved health care or pay tax? They voted that down, saying that, quote, small businesses had it too good. Small businesses have it too good. And then not only did they ram it through the House without even a single chance, not one alternative, not one idea from a Republican, not any opportunity to say, this is the wrong solution, but consider this, America. They rammed it through. We were there when they went into hiding, and on nearly Christmas, to strike 17 special deals to get the final votes to pass that legislation. And then at night, with 60% of Americans opposed to that bill, they jammed it through. So, if anyone here questions my absolute anger at this bill and my efforts to stop it, I just want to clear that up right now. What I have said and what I believe, because I know this bill, the chart we went through, 2,800 pages, we spent 4 months, evenings, weekends, going through every provision to put it on paper so the American public could actually see what they passed. We've helped fight every part of this bill. And in the House, you need to know this too. We've never funded Obamacare in the Republican House. Never. And we've defunded $55 billion of that bill. And you don't hear that very often. I'm glad the Senate, look, I'm glad our Senate Republicans are in this fight. Some people show up to the boxing match in the 10th round and think the fight just started. But for a number of us, we've been fighting this from day one. We're glad they're finally engaged. In the House, I have no doubt we're going to pass over the legislation to keep the government open without funding and defunding Obamacare. We're going to give the Senate Republicans the chance to do that. I actually believe. And I'm going to vote for that, absolutely. But the Senate Republicans, they called this play. They've gambled everything on it, and now they got to come through. They have to first stop the filibuster. They have to have a filibuster. They have to stop the CR. 41 of the 45, 46 need to join together and stop funding the government going forward. Right now, well, you do the math. You're reading the same thing I'm reading about whether they can do it or not. But we're going to give them the opportunity because we're glad they're finally fighting over there in the Senate. But if they fail, what then? My belief is that, and I've read Congressman Brady's language. It's nothing new. We've been through this language almost 3 years ago. I believe, honestly, that the only way to stop Obamacare completely is to repeal it. Like Social Security, like Medicare, the way it was written, you can't simply defund it, you have to go farther. Because there's dedicated taxes to this, dedicated revenue and user fees to it. It continues on. Today, since we've not funded it, they've been robbing Peter to pay Paul. Right now, they're just stealing from other accounts to try to put this mess in place. They've got 3 accounts left. They've drawn down all that were funded by Democrats. All that have been drawn down, almost completely drawn down, not completely yet, but they're on their last leg. I think if the Senate Republicans fail to unite and fail to stop the vote from going forward, there are 2 huge opportunities to knock this law back off its foundation. One is that the House has already passed, and it's sitting in the Senate, and no one's fighting for it. Legislation to get the IRS completely and totally out of our health care. The IRS. There are nearly, and you know this, they have nearly 50 new authorities, 50 new powers, 47 to be exact, in this law. If you pull them out of Obamacare, you make it almost impossible for that thing to work. But there's some more. Another bill that can knock this again off the foundation is legislation we've already passed in the House that delays the mandate on average workers for another year. Here's why it's important. There's 2 pillars to Obamacare. You guys know this because you're informed, you're engaged. One is the mandate that companies over 50 offer government-approved health care pay a tax. The other is the mandate that every worker in America, every individual, have government-approved health care or pay a tax. Those are the twin pillars of Obamacare. One has been delayed a year on businesses, but they've kept the one on workers in place. And so they've given a waiver to Warren Buffett and Donald Trump. But Joe Sixpack and Joe the Plumber, average workers like, oh no, on January 1st, you comply with that mandate or you pay a tax. That single part of Obamacare is the single most unpopular provision in that whole law. Repealing that or knocking it back a full year has Republican and Democratic support. So does getting the IRS out of your health care. If the Senate fails to run this play successfully, I think they ought not waste a second and push both of those bills through with bipartisan support with the American public. I think beyond defunding Obamacare, we also ought to be asking ourselves, why don't we get the IRS out of our health care? Let the president and Democrats defend that. And why does Donald Trump get a break and average workers don't? Let them defend that. Because that's not backed just by conservatives. That's backed by Democrats, independents, socialists, the whole game. So my thought is we fight Julie, just in case it was interpreted that it's a repeal only. Absolutely not. I think we need to fight Obamacare in 1,000 different ways. Both in defunding, repealing, replace, delay, because in 2016, I intend to have a Republican president, Republican House, Senate, who can pull that out by the roots. And I want those roots either not in or so shallow we can get the job done. And so I actually think if they can't pull it off, if they can't hang together, then we need to fight to delay, because that is equally important at this juncture. One of my frustrations, maybe you feel it too, I think the president wakes up every day figuring out how to punch Republicans and conservatives in the face. We wake up every day trying to figure out how to punch each other in the face. And as long as we keep doing that, as long as we don't unite in defunding, repealing, delaying, pulling out the mandates, he's going to keep winning. And the odds are we're going to keep fighting among ourselves, and he's going to prevail. So we need to change our thinking up there and unite behind throwing punches against the worst laws we've ever seen, starting with Obamacare. So that's my position and view on that. The reason, here's the reason I wanted to get your thoughts on tax reform, and here's the only reason. The number one issue and the biggest challenge facing our country is our debts and deficits. We are spending our way and taxing our kids and burdening them with debt that they can never hope to repay. Spending cuts, they can get us halfway to a balanced budget, maybe a little more, but to finish the job, we're going to need a much stronger economy than we have today. Fixing this broken tax code, moving the IRS out of our lives, I'm convinced can get this economy going again, get people back to work. And the goal is not simply balance the budget, it's to actually start paying down our national debt. That's why we're doing all these tax reform town hall meetings. This is all about debt and spending. And in September, the Ways and Means Republicans, having spent a good solid 2.5 years doing the hard work that President Reagan did back in 1980s in his team. And in September, we intend to lay down the first rewrite of this horrible tax code. Top to bottom rewrite. Both push, I think it's time. You tell me. And could I have 10 minutes of your time? Sure. Tell you why I think we need to do this. That's all. I'll talk faster than I normally ever do. This is a cartoon that says, this scientist looking in the super collider and saying we're trying to recreate conditions at the beginning of the universe, and the tax code was understandable. You know, on the Ways and Means Committee, because the tax code comes out, starts with us, this is the way we tax America. It's too costly, it's too complex, it's unfair. It's unfair to families. It's impossible to understand this code. You know, 4 million words, 72,000 pages. As Dave Camp, the chairman of our committee, likes to say, the tax code's 10 times the size of the Bible with none of the good news, which I think is exactly right. It's time consuming. The average Texan sitting in this room tonight spends 13 hours just collecting the data, the receipts, the information, before you go to TurboTax or you give it to a tax preparer. You can't keep up with the changes. 4,000 changes the last decade. That's one new tax law every day for a decade. It's impossible to keep up with. And it's impossible to know what works, what you're eligible for or not. We're saving for our 2 boys. We have a 5th grader in Collins and a 9th grader starting at College Park. We're saving for college. There's 15 different higher education provisions in the tax code. I don't know which one we're eligible for. And the simple guide to understanding the 15 is 90 pages long. So how can you keep up there? And as you know, if you make a mistake on your taxes, the IRS is absolutely unforgiving. If you've ever been on the other end of that, you know what I'm talking about. Look at the taxes. It's hard to imagine it was 400 pages to begin with. Look, 72,000 and just exploded. What we have today is unfair to businesses. 9 out of 10 small businesses in Montgomery County have to hire a tax preparer to keep up with the taxes they owe. This is wrong. Many small businesses actually pay a higher rate than big business. That's because small businesses often file as individuals like you and I, as corporations, partnerships. Their tax for small business is 44.6%. Big business is less than that. That's unfair. And American businesses of all sizes, it's getting harder and harder to compete around the world. We have the worst tax code for American companies to compete in the modern world. We have the highest tax rate against our competitors. Worse, we tax a Texas company when they're in America. We tax them again around the world. And then to make it even worse, when our businesses compete and win and make a profit, we're about the only country left. We tax them if they want to bring the profits home and invest in America. We punish them to bring their profits home to create a new job or new research or build a building in America. That's unfair as well. And finally, I think our tax code forces jobs overseas. Hey, here's the only chart. This is all our competitors around the world. This is America. This green line is what their highest business rate used to be. The blue line is what they've all lowered it to the last decade. Look, Germany, Belgium, Greece, France, Italy, isn't on and on and on, but not us. And now we've got the highest corporate tax rate in the world. And finally, I think the tax code is unfair to America. You know, we waste $160 billion a year just trying to comply with it. It's a huge drag on the economy. If you start a new business, you know it's hugely difficult to do. We're falling behind China, we're falling behind Europe, we're losing jobs and sales. And nowhere in America is that more important than right here. Texas is the #1, the biggest exporting state in America. Nobody sells their ships more around the world than our state. And guess what region does the same for the country as well? Our region. And so when our companies, when Anadarko and CBI and Baker Hughes and others can't compete, it costs us jobs here at home. And we don't have to accept that. What experts tell us, if we can make this code simpler and fair and flatter, we can create 1 million new American jobs the first year. Not over time, the first year. And guess who did that ahead of us? President Reagan in the 1980s. A Republican president with the Democrat House and Senate. So what are we waiting for? We need a code that's built for growth to your family, your business, the growth of our economy in America. We need a simpler, fair tax code that protects you guys, taxpayers, not special interests. And we need one that allows us to compete and win around the world. My principles, again, this is what I start with. I think any reform's got to be simpler, fair. It's got to be fair, flatter, simpler. We're going to have to close loopholes and limit deductions to lower tax rates for everybody. Here's why. And this is why I wanted to talk to you. If this podium represented all the taxes we collect in America, imagine income about almost equal, just a little less than that. That's how much we exclude. Those are the exemptions, the tax, the loopholes, the deductions, thousands of them. And many of them benefit very few. So here's the real question. Do we want to keep provisions that benefit a few, or do we want to lower tax rates for everybody? That's the key issue facing the country. I think we need to make sure small business no longer pays higher rates than big. We ought to stop encouraging companies to shift out. Let's limit spending and strengthen the economy. That's going to be how we get this debt down. And finally, do not raise taxes to bail out Washington's spending problem. Washington has a spending problem. We need to deal with that. We're not going to raise taxes to bail them out. I'm getting almost done. We're close to it. You know these. These are the 7 rates. 10% on, down. As you know, it's like a car wash. You pay an amount on each dollar as it goes through. So 10% on the first amount, 15% on the next, on and on. On paper, we're told our tax rate's at 39.5%. But in real life, the Obama tax increases and the Obamacare taxes is over 44.5%. Now, Texas doesn't have an income tax, but a lot of states do, which means in some parts of America, families and small businesses pay a rate of over 50%. The reason that's important is that when you do that, the government has a greater claim over your earnings than you do. All the hours of work, all the risks you take, the time from your family, the money you borrow, the second mortgage you took out in your home, when that finally succeeds, the government has a greater claim over your earnings than you do. I think that's unfair. with the code we have today. Here's what's happening. Tax rates are increasing. For individuals, President Reagan lowered it from 70 to 28%. It came up to 35 looks, crept up again, 44.6. Capital gains is critical to the economy. You know this. But when you earn a dollar, there's three things you can do. You can save it, you can spend it, or you can invest it back in the economy. Capital gains is about reinvesting in the economy. President Reagan kept the rates low. I was part of the team that lowered it to 15%, but now it's going back up to 23.8. Dividends, really critical to seniors. Beyond Social Security, and you're not getting anything on your CDs anymore with the thank you, Ben Bernanke, for these low rates. Seniors aren't getting any help. Dividends are critical for them. President Reagan lowered it a ton. I and others lowered it to 15. It's going back up. Corporate rates stayed the same, but our competitors are going down. And here's what's changed. Since President Reagan did this reform, fewer and fewer Americans, the biggest change, fewer and fewer Americans are paying more and more of the taxes in America. In Washington, they call that being progressive. And now we have the most progressive tax code in the world. But that's all it is, shifting more and more on the fewer and fewer. Look at this. I'm going to shoot you a couple graphs just to make the point. The way they figure income, who pays taxes, they divide America into 1/5 quintile. The bottom, second, middle, all that. Here, since 1980, look, the bottom quintile is paying less than before. The second one, less than before. The middle one, less than before. The fourth, less than before. Top 1%, more. This just went up. But look at this. The highest 1/5 of Americans pay 94% of taxes. 1 out of every 5 Americans shoulders almost all the tax burden in America. You don't see that in rallies very often, I've noticed, around this country. Look at it. Top 1%, you hear this in Washington, well, we need to pay more. Really? Top 1% is already shouldering 37% of the burden of government. Top 5%, almost 60. Top 10%, on and on. Look, those quintiles they talked about, those 1/5, the first and the second, they're earning some of the wages, but they're getting back more taxes than they put in. And now, nearly, not quite, but nearly 50% of Americans are not paying income tax. They pay payroll taxes for sure, but they're getting back more than they put in. And then up here, back to the the highest 1/5, again shouldering almost all. And here's another way of looking at it. Here's France, Japan, Italy, France, Spain, Greece, for heaven's sakes. All our competitors around the world, we actually rely more and more on less and less taxpayers than any of them. My point is, we keep going this direction, we're going to kill the golden goose. The people who worked the hardest and risked the most and stayed in school and took all the tough work to be successful, we're going to kill that golden goose if we stay on the track we're on today. Small businesses are following as individuals. More exemptions, loopholes, and deductions than when President Reagan reformed it. I wouldn't call these loopholes, but these are exemptions that you know about. When your business contributes to your health care or insurance, it's exempted. It's part of the exemption. The home deduction, mortgage deduction. How you save for retirement. How you give to charities. We exempt that. There's thousands more of these provisions. For companies, how you buy equipment and write it off, how you do your research and development, how you do your accounting, exempted. But there's literally tens of thousands of special provisions you've never heard of. So what are the options? So what are our options as a country? One, there's 2 ways to tax. You can tax buying, how you buy things, consumption, or income, how you earn things. The consumption options, let's just drop this. The value-added tax, if you've ever been to Europe or Canada, you know how these things work. This works. It's a small tax, added at every stage of value. So the company that actually went to the mill and bought the wood and cut it into pieces, if they bought it for $20 and sold it for $30, they pay a small tax on the value. The company they sold it to that shaped it into this, put it together and assembled it, paid a small tax on the value added. The company that added the electronics, wrapped it and shipped it to the retailer, paid another, and then when you bought it, you paid another. That's how the value added tax works. Economists love it. Politicians who love hidden taxes love it as well, because it seems small and you can't see it. I hate hidden taxes. I think taxes ought to be out front. I wish we had to write that check every month instead of having it deducted. I think things would change fast in Washington, D.C. The sales tax, the national retail sales tax, the fair tax, whose home is here in Houston. It has 70 sponsors, only 7 in the Senate, but they're working on it. This one is unique. It replaces all the other income taxes, business, families, all of them gone. Replaces all the payroll taxes, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. So you virtually keep 100% of your paycheck. Does away with the death tax too. What it does is put a 23-cent sales tax on products and services the first time it's bought in retail. That 23 cents is on top of the 8 we pay today, so we're looking at 31 cents on them. But not on used items, not on the second time they're bought, not on all the business purchases along the way, none of that. One time, first time it goes across the cash register. And they have something else that's really unique. To try to help families who are poor, trying to work their way up the economic ladder, they have a prebate. Not a rebate after, a prebate before. And for every American family, the way it works is that your sales tax is up to sales purchases and taxes up to the line of poverty are tax-free. So family for Montgomery County, for the first $25,000 of what you buy each year is essentially tax-free. That's to try to make sure those who are poor and those who are working their way up are treated fair. It's the only, I have to tell you full disclosure, I'm a sponsor of the fair tax. And I think if we started over, with a clean slate, there is no question. The sales tax captures the whole economy. So those who are here in the drug market, those who are not here legally, others all have visitors. 300 million visitors to America that finally pay a share of the government while they're visiting here as well. I think if we start from scratch, this is without question the most economical, efficient, and so one that gets the IRS out of your life. That's why I think it has real merit. But I have to level it. There's no perfect tax in America. All these things have their pros and their cons. There's no question about it. This is a pretty bold departure. It's got some challenges on it, especially for retirees. I think they can be overcome, but I have to tell you, as Senator Cruz told us here 2 weeks ago in Conroe, there's an awful lot of work, an awful lot of support that has to be built before this becomes real. I think the IRS abuses of power now have added a lot of momentum to this. The sales tax, no question about it, has given it new life, but a lot of work has to be done. Expenditure tax, let's hope that can go. Income tax, we're down to the last 2 cents. Flat tax. A text, Dr. Michael Burgeon sponsors this, HR 1040. He follows Big Arm, the follower of the flat tax. What he's proposing is that we have in America a 10% flat tax on income. Not all exemptions, not all that, just one standard deduction. Be 19% the first 2 years, 17 after that. He does that to make sure the revenue stays the same. But he does something really kind of clever. It's an option. So you can choose to keep it the same, stay with the same horrible tax code we have today. Or you can opt for that flat tax, but you can't go back and forth. You choose it, pick it, live it. It has 10 sponsors now. Finally, when America sent Nancy Pelosi packing, but House Republicans charged the Budget Committee came to us and said, how would Reagan-style reform look today? If we were going to follow that type of reform, what would it look like? So in our budget that we passed every year, the only budget that balances, what we've dragged, just an outline, what we said is, look, simplify those 7 rates down to 2, so that most Americans pay a 10% tax rate, the higher earners 25 to 28. The Reagan reform. lower that corporate tax rate, do away with the worldwide tax. That's better than less. That doesn't make us the most competitive rate in America, but when our local businesses tell us, you don't have to be the lowest rate in the world, stop being the highest rate in the world. And stop the worldwide taxation. Give us a level playing field. Go compete and win for as long as you have us competing. We do away, we make sure small businesses don't pay more than corporations, limit the AMT, don't raise taxes. We're dead serious about it. We've laid out 3 drafts of this, 30 public hearings, put together bipartisan tax forces on 11 different areas. I chair energy. We created a tax reform website, 14,000 submissions. We're going to act. House Republicans are going to lead because we can't get back to a balanced budget soon enough until we get the economy going. We're going to introduce the bill. We hope to move it through by this fall. Depends about Syria, the debt ceiling, the CR, all these issues. We hope to move it through the House this year or early next year. Will the Senate act? Hard to know. They say they want to do it. But they have a big gap between Republicans who won't accept tax increases, thankfully, Democrats who want $1 trillion. The president says he wants to do tax reform. The truth is, he really wants to do corporate rates, which could go to 25, but small businesses and families would be 44. That's unfair as well. So the questions I have for you, and then let's turn to other issues as well. What do you think is the biggest problem with the tax code today? What do you object to about the way you're taxed? Secondly, should Congress act on that? Or should we just keep jawing about it for another couple of decades? What's the most important change to you? Is it fair? Is it flatter? Is it simpler? Lower? Maybe it's all of the above. Are you willing, and this is the key question that I want my families thinking about ahead of time, would you support some changes and loopholes and deductions to lower rates? Democrats say you won't. I think you will, but I won't know till I hear from you. And finally, should tax reform bail out Washington spending problems? I hope that your answer is no on that, because it absolutely should. I'll finish with this point. There's brochures on the chair. If you feel like filling the survey out tonight, that'd be great. If you want to take it home, send it to us, go to the website. I wanted you to have a preview of what I think is a major issue coming down the way. I want you to think about it. The issue being better informed than any congressional district in America. And then I want you to engage, because there's plenty of people in Washington who don't want to see the tax code change. They've got their special provision in there. They don't want anything changed. We're going to need grassroots to get it done. With that, let's stop, take questions on this, Syria, anything you want to talk about, let's do it. Let's open it up.
Folks, while you're lining up to ask your questions and make your comments, State Representative Steve Toth is here, and I would ask that you give your attention to him for just a moment, and we'll have one person over there, one person over here with the microphone.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you, Congressman Brady. The Texas Patriots PAC is doing some great, I don't know what the deal is here, is doing some great things across the state of Texas, and Julie and John and Michelle and the rest of the team are being more involved than just Montgomery County. In fact, they're a major influence in the 83rd legislative session this year as they came to Texas and met with lawmakers to continue to share on a monthly basis what the needs were of grassroots people across the state of Texas, keeping Texas competitive and strong. And now, they're branching out across the state of Texas and working with other Tea Party groups to increase voter turnout and make sure that we elect conservative folks in Washington and in Austin. And so, Julie, thank you for what you're doing. But that all costs money. And we want to encourage you. We're going to send hats around in just a second. If you don't have money, reach into the person's pocket next to you and be a good Democrat for a moment. And but seriously, we do need for everyone to try and help out a little bit tonight so that we all bear this burden together, okay? Because we're doing a great thing here, and I'm proud of each and every one of you for all that you're doing. Thank you.
I don't have a question right off, but I have a request.
Yes, sir.
When you go back to Washington next week, I'd like for you to take with you 3 things. First is a piece of Texas history. Many years ago, General Sam Houston, after weeks and weeks of retreat and retreat and retreat, was finally told by his circle of friends, "You've got to do something now or you're going to lose this army." They finally did finally push back, and they won against all odds. Take that to Washington. The second thing is another piece of Texas history, and that's this group right here, and hundreds more, just like us, worked our tails off last year to nominate and elect Ted Cruz. He's doing exactly what we wanted him to do. We want more. The third thing I want you to take to Washington is a message to the Republican leadership. It's time to quit fiddling around with all the things around the edges and get serious. Prioritize. There's only one thing. You've got 27 days to do it, and that's defund Obamacare. And when you've done that, you will put several Senate Democrats on notice that they're up for re-election. And I, for one, because I already have my Ted Cruz, I'm going to a neighboring state where there's a Democrat running for the Senate, and I'm going to beat him. I'm going to work my tail off for Joe Cotton. So if you would, please ask for everybody to put down the things that they've been fiddling with, get with Obamacare, and get jobs created in the private sector. And that's all we should be doing between now and the end of the year, because the Democrats that go against that are going to get defeated. Thank you very much, Beth.
A different word than fiddling, but I will go with that. So, yeah, we already sure.
Good evening, Congress and Brady. My name is John Postel, and I'm the pastor of God's Church Fellowship here in Williams. And I come tonight, sir, as a representative of the Most High God, who says he hates the shed of innocent blood. And we continue today, as of this day, to mutilate, destroy, and murder 4,000 babies a day in this country that we call the United States of America. And with that, Congressman, I hear what you're saying, but I totally disagree with you, sir. And my question is, I want to say my question at the end, but I just want to read you a couple of stats that I found today, because I did my homework, and it's my understanding that $67 million, that's how much money the Department of Human Services plans to disperse in grants to more than 100 organizations, supposedly to help consumers figure out their options under Obamacare. However, Representative Diane Black has introduced the legislation, and that's bill number HR 2087, and I checked on that today. I called her office, and I understand this is some kind of committee. But Congressman, I understand you want to repeal, but y'all
Replace, repeal, replace, delay, defund, stop.
Okay,
That's
well,
my
then why
position.
don't we do the best thing next right now and just totally defund it? defund this bill, because if this goes through, Congressman, we will have on our hands the shedding of innocent blood, you understand? We will okay another $655,000 out of the $67 million to be granted to Planned Parenthood and its affiliates, and they are under investigation for fraud in multiple states. And I'm not accusing you of nothing, sir. I think you've done a fine job in different areas. I followed you over the last several years since you became the congressman of this district. Actually, I moved into this district when you became the congressman. And but I want to ask you, is there any way that you may be influenced to the fact that your 20 top contributors to your campaign, of the 20 top, the 4 top of those contain 3 health providers, like health professionals, health services, HMOs, hospitals, and nursing homes, which given well way over just the health professionals $52,992, $24,000 from the health services and HMOs, hospitals and nursing homes, $23,750. And I can send you this by email and show you where I got my stats from. But Congressman Brady, if you do go back to Washington, D.C., and do not support over 1 million signatures have been taken on do not fund as of this day, and over 70% of this nation is saying that they want to defund Obamacare. My suggestion to you, sir, is never refer to yourself as pro-life again.
Pastor, let me thank you for your spiritual leadership. Frankly, it's what's missing in a lot of America today. It's why I think we're headed the wrong direction in so many ways. But let me tell you why I'm here and why I'm 100% pro-life. It's not a policy for me. We have a family, 2 young boys we adopted. We had no luck getting pregnant, my wife and I. We adopted 2 little boys only because 2 women in 2 states chose life. And God gave us a family because of that. So, being pro-life isn't, to me, it isn't a policy. It's not a position. It is my life. And so I will hold on. So I'm going to fight, not only have I fought on every pro-life issue and defunding of Planned Parenthood, I've fought on every Obamacare issue as well. And I'm telling you, we're going to continue to fight, but not just on one area. I'm telling you, we are hopeful Senate Republicans can pull together to do this. We're hopeful they can get 20 liberal Democrats to back them to actually succeed in this. But if they don't, we're not giving up the fight. That's my point to you. We're not stopping. I love you. But I disagree that this is our last effort to stop it. I absolutely disagree. I'm not going to stop fighting on it, period. So, just to sort of fact check some of those issues. And on the health care, by the way, I am chairman of health. I asked to be. I want to be in the middle of Obamacare all the way through it. The hospitals in Texas hate Obamacare. The doctors and physicians are fleeing from it. The nursing homes are getting tens of millions of dollars cut. They can't see the seniors they want. So, I'm glad they're supporting it, because I think this is the worst bill ever for health care. Already has. Go ahead.
Good evening, Congressman Brady. My name is Dan Hagan.
Yeah, hey Dan.
In regard to my upcoming question, please don't tell me that you voted to protect middle-income taxes from going up, because no one, Democrat or Republican, was going to vote to allow income taxes to go up for middle-income people. This was not an issue that was in contention between the parties in January. Earlier tonight, you showed the income tax rates going up from 35 to 39%, capital gains and dividends going from 15 to 20%. And you also stated you will not raise taxes to bail out spending. But in January this year, and my question is, why did you vote with the majority of Democrats in Obama and against the majority of Republicans when you voted to increase taxes in January during the fiscal cliff debates? How is it possible that you could vote for higher taxes?
I ended up voting for. It was all actually, most of it to the middle class. What we did, now hold on, you asked the question. The bulk of that actually was to help middle class families stop the alternative minimum tax.
That was not debatable on the
No,
merits.
actually, it was all debatable because this president, well, let's look at it. Let's look at the scoreboard. What the president wanted was $1.6 trillion in new taxes. That was debatable. What the president wanted was $50 billion in new stimulus. That was debatable. And what the president wanted was an unlimited debt ceiling. Never again to have to come to Congress ever to get borrowing authority. That was all debatable. What Republicans, I was as frustrated and angry as everybody, but if we hadn't stopped higher tax increases, more of them, what we voted for as conservatives was to make the Bush tax cuts permanent. Almost 85%, something conservatives have been fighting for a decade. We stopped the A&T from hitting you guys. We prevented the death tax. I lead the Death Tax Coalition in America to repeal the death tax once and for all. It's just immoral tax. We didn't get the spending cuts we wanted, nowhere near it. Anyone who thinks or is satisfied with that, forget it, no conservative was. But we also knew we had the sequester cuts coming right behind it. We knew both with the sequester and the CR we would have a chance to actually cut spending. We blocked any changes to the sequester. That's why I voted to make the Bush tax cuts permanent, protect people from A&T, stop the death tax from going back and capturing all these people, and that's why.
Congressman Brady, my name is David Pittman. I feel like Andy, I've met you several times.
Yeah, I did.
I've moved into your area that you moved out. I moved into something following you around. I appreciate all you've done for Western IRS, a lot of the things that you presented today. One thing that hasn't been brought up about, which I'm concerned about, was the Patriot Act that was put forth. It was dependent on not having court oversight.
Yeah.
And now it's going through, we find out that they're looking at our phone records and keeping phone records, so they can say, well, we're going to keep these records, but we're not going to look at it unless we find something about it. Then they go back in time and say, what? You associated with this guy, this guy, this guy. According to the Constitution, they should not have our records, period, unless they get a court order first. Then they start collecting records at that time. And you voted to support the funding of the National Security Council recently, and then voted for another bill that failed. And I felt like that was, you should have voted for both of them, not just for one. So,
got it. Okay, let's do that. One, to be real clear, I don't trust this White House to protect our privacy. Period. This program, the NSA, it doesn't trust them either. That's why a separate independent court was set up to every 90 days, every White House, doesn't matter who's there, has to go and explain to them how the program is run, who they've been tracking, and hold themselves accountable. Then, on top of that, and by the way, that's happened every 90 days, 14 different independent judges have had to say, okay, that follows the constitutional law. Secondly, Congress doesn't trust them either. We've got oversight, we have an intelligence committee, but I'll tell you, when this whole thing broke, I went to several conservatives on the intelligence committee who are not just security hawks, they're privacy hawks. We sat down and went through this whole program. All the good parts of it, all the flaws, how it's working, what the checks and balances are. I came away from those meetings absolutely convinced this is a critical intelligence tool for America. This is an extremely unsafe world. This program can only track those with direct foreign terrorist links. Only direct foreign terrorist links. And it is, as you know, a big spreadsheet with every phone number in it across America. Only if there's a direct link, you pick up, which is what happened, a thumb drive in Iraq and Afghanistan from a terrorist group, and they've got a 713 number, a 281 number. They can only pursue that if there's information that links you directly to a foreign terrorist organization. And they can't know anything about your call, anything, until they go back to the court with reasonable, specific information that you were involved with that direct terrorist organization, foreign terrorist organization. That is the only way it works. That big spreadsheet of all of our cell phones, including mine, are untouched unless there is a direct link. It's gone back to an independent court, proven the evidence, and then and only then can it connect the dots. Look, this is, yeah, right. But you know something? This is proof. You know, we would not have stopped that New York subway bombing. Absolutely would not have tracked that email overseas in a foreign organization to a person in Colorado with a co-conspirator that traveled to New York. We absolutely would not have stopped that terrorist attack without this information. And just prior to that, I just want to give you an example. Talked to U.S. Attorney, a bright conservative from Indiana. Thumb drive was picked up in Iraq or Afghanistan. They had phone numbers back to Indiana. What they did, using a full investigation, was they identified a Saddam Hussein intelligence officer, a KGB trainer, who was embedded as a truck driver, married an American woman, had an American child, but was sending information back, attempting to sell it, trying to get in a position to handle hazardous materials. It was stopped. And he's now in prison today because they were able to connect the dots between direct, foreign terrorist organization and someone in the United States. That's all that law allows. And I will tell you, today's a good example of it. And if anyone in America thinks this war on terror is over, and some in Washington do, it is not. We need this tool, but we need the checks and balances on as well. I didn't vote for the Amash amendment because I believe that it destroyed a critical intelligence tool. That's why.
Good evening, Representative Brady. You know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm Dawn Stone. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
I have a statement first, which of course you would understand. We are no longer a nation of laws. We are a nation of men, and our republic is dead. And in its place is a fascist state with a tyrant in training. The legislative branch has abdicated their responsibilities and allowed this to happen. Now, it hasn't happened overnight, but it's come to a head. We have bills that are 2,900 pages. Nobody reads them. They are passed, and then they are sent to unelected bureaucrats to write regulations that strangle Americans and American businesses. Now, I was glad to hear that you're concerned about our national debt. It's $16.9 trillion and climbing. I have an 18-year-old son and his peers, and I look at them and I know that they are financial slaves to Washington, D.C. We have to stop the spending, and I don't see it happening, not with Congress and not with the White House. Now, I'm pleased that you're looking to see what we can do for taxes, because it is a mess. It's a convoluted, nobody knows what's going on, but once again, it all boils down to unelected bureaucrats and their regulations. My concern is what's going on now, that we are destroying our country, and for future generations, we will not exist as a republic. So I am glad to see that you're looking for tax reform. Personally, I believe the sales tax, not the VAT tax, but a flat sales tax,
Retail, fair tax.
everything, except for food. And so when you buy that, and you see it on your receipt, and you know how much tax you pay to the federal government, and everybody pays. Everybody pays. So that's what I believe, is that we make it small and on everything but food. But we've got to stop the spending.
Yep, yep. Thank you. Part of our biggest problem, reason, if you ask why we're pushing to fix this broken code, by the way, if you'd like an update on the IRS investigation, I'd be glad to give it to you. But if you want to know why we're pushing this now, is that we have a little less than 50% of Americans who are not paying income. It's continuing to grow. Once we get over 50%, once we reach that tipping point, our chances to fix this code are zero. Because the majority of Americans aren't contributing to its government. One, I think we need to act now. Two, I think it's critical to get back a balanced budget. Not by itself. You got to have the spending cuts. That's the balance. That's the two things we have to do. Finally, I think everybody ought to pay something to shoulder the burden of government. I mean, look, for young people trying to make their way, folks who are born into a bad situation, someone who comes out of an ugly divorce, is trying to work their way up. I don't mean a lot. Just something. Just share someone. Everybody in this government. I think that's just critical going forward. Thanks. Thanks for your comments too. I appreciate it.
Good evening, Congressman Brady. Jeremy Taylor, first I want to acknowledge your personal courage for being here tonight. I'm a little confused at how the sentences came out in your presentation about Obamacare. So I want to ask you two very simple questions. In the event that during this calendar year there's a CR that comes up that includes any funding current or proposed for Obamacare, will you vote no?
Run that by me. If there's
In this calendar year, if there is a CR that comes up and it includes any funding for Obamacare, either current or proposed funding, will you vote no?
Does it include repealing the IRS and moving them out of our health care? Does it include knocking the mandate away?
Include anything you want to in the CR that includes any funding, will you vote?
In the House, we are going to pass a CR that defunds Obamacare. No question about it.
Is that a no from you?
Well,
Yes.
if it has legislation to get the IRS out of our health care or to delay the mandate, two critical ways to knock Obamacare off, then I'm going to look at that bill. I guarantee you, because that's how we can stop it.
You are in favor of funding it if you get some of your other...
No, we are. I tell you what. Maybe I'm not being
very specific on this.
I will. The House has never funded Obamacare. We've defunded $55 billion. We are not going to fund Obamacare.
You funded it in January when you did your continuing resolution.
No, we actually did not. We did not.
The current funding was in place and was not taken.
No, the current funding was in place from Nancy Pelosi's days.
That's
We've
what I'm
defunded, continued to fund, and will continue to fund those areas, but Republicans have never funded Obamacare.
So I'll repeat my question. In the event that there's a CR this calendar year that requires current or proposed funding for Obamacare, will you vote no?
If it includes a repeal of the IRS, that's my answer. Yep. I want to stop Obamacare. If the Senate can't stop it, if the Senate can't, they call the play and they can't do it, tell you what, we're going to vote to get the IRS out. We're going to vote to stop the mandate. We're going to pull out the stops.
Thank you for telling us how you vote.
Yeah. And I tell you this, House conservatives, we're not, actually I am, but you know, House conservatives don't believe shutting down government works. One, because it doesn't save money. It doesn't stop Obamacare. That continues. You hand over to the government, you hand over to this president the ability to decide who's essential and who's not. And so you can imagine national security, the issues I care about most, I'm not turning that over to this president. We're just not. Yes, ma'am.
Stuart Schrader, good evening, Congressman.
Hey, Stuart.
I'm going to go foreign policy. Give me your thoughts on Syria.
The only thing worse than not acting is to act poorly and look weaker than we are today. I am skeptical that we need intervention in Syria. I am skeptical that's in our national interest. Before we send, my brother's in the military, he's an Iraq War veteran. It has to be our national security interest, not Syria. Second, before I vote ever to send one of our men or women into a war they may not come back to, I want to make sure this is all about our interests and that we are there for victory. Because and they're getting 110% of our support. So my point is, I think the president's doing this for the wrong reasons, the wrong way. And unless there is something, I have probably, over the last 2 days, I think 50% of the information that's been provided, we're gaining each day, learning more. I haven't seen anything in that information that would change my mind. So I think we're stretched too thin. And you know, it's not enough. I understand the arguments they're making right now, and some people support them. But you know, when we send those missiles from the ships, it doesn't end there. If we vote to have military action, then we ought to know ahead of time what we're willing to do in that country. And it also seems to me, in Syria or that whole region, they don't understand nuanced messaging. They understand force. So we either go in all the way and change that whole thing, or better yet, stay out of it. That's my point. Yes, sir.
My name is David Guaramo.
Hey, David.
Good evening, Kevin. Kevin, I have 2 questions, but before I go there, first of all, I'm very pleased to hear about your support for the fair tax, and I'd like to suggest that you edit that slide by adding 2 bullets. The first bullet is with the fair tax, you essentially do away with the IRS, and by doing that, you reduce the power of the IRS. You have to improve question. The syndicated talk show host Mark Levin is in favor of a convention of the states so that a grassroots effort can help to reel in the irresponsible spending of Congress. And a constitutional attorney by the name of Mike Ferris is heading up that effort. I've volunteered my time to help pursue it. My 2 questions are, considering how dysfunctional Congress is, would you support that effort? And if not, what other type of fast-track means would you suggest to be able to put a stop to the irresponsible federal juggernaut?
You know, right now, I'll take any avenue it takes to get a constitutional amendment to balance the budget. I really think that's the first and most important step we can take. So I'm open to the convention, or frankly, any way we can get this. Yep, gotta have it. Yes, sir.
Congressman Gary Hibbensteel, I have here one of the rarest documents in America today. This is a 501c3 acceptance
Oh my God.
by the IRS for the Constitutional Education Foundation. It took 2 years and 2 months to secure the document. It caused financial pain to myself, my associates, the organization, literally brought us down to starting over again. They lied to you in the committee hearings. Things they told you, things they told you were not true. I submitted names, telephone numbers to your office to follow up of field agents I'd actually worked with. Are you going to bring them to justice?
The answer is yes. One, congratulations. But you're fairly unique because a lot of conservative organizations, pro-life, pro-Israel, patriot, Constitution, are still waiting 3 years later for their approval, and too many have simply given up on that. So congratulations on persisting until...
Call them every 2 weeks and bug your field officer. The second point, very quick question is, has everybody thought this fair tax or sales tax through to the conclusion? Because it brings up one of Congress's favorite laws, the law of unintended consequences. With an aging population generally and taxing consumption, the allure is to broaden the tax base. If you tend to tax consumption, you will create the new vision of the Japanese economy. And I think that economic growth will not be what we would hope out of this. Broadening the base is the objective. I would be very concerned about taxing the consumption side and retarding consumption.
Two thoughts. One, most economists believe that it's far better for your economic engine to tax consumption than income, earnings, savings, which is what we do today. The Fair Tax Organization, based here in Houston, have got these great economic studies that show just the opposite, that a one-rate national retail sales tax applied to everybody actually will make us perhaps the most competitive tax code in the world, and we'll see more business locations here in the country. I've read those studies. They seem very solid. Now let me tell you one thing, because this is all, look, we need to know warts and all. We got a couple of challenges on that bill. One, the pre-bate's pretty clunky. It's how you figure out how to do that. There'll still be a bureaucracy to do it. Our other challenge, retirees. You've saved your whole life with the nest egg, saving money, and you pay taxes once or twice at least on it. You come to the store and there's a 31-cent sales tax on it, you're going to bolt off. But two things to consider. I'm not selling you on that. I'm telling you what the proposal does. Two things. One, you have a tax-free retirement. No longer are you taxed on your savings, your income, what you earn, Social Security, nothing. So you keep everything you've earned. Secondly, in every product, including this podium, studies show that every tax a business pays, the business taxes, the payroll taxes of the workers, the income taxes, the accountants they hired, all that ends up in this. And they show between 20 and 25% of the cost of that product is from all those taxes hidden in there, embedded in there. And that without those in there, all these products, in the competitive world we live in, where you can shop around the world for everything, those product prices are going to go down. I'm not trying to sell you on it. My only point is this is a proposal worth taking a hard look at. And along with the Reagan-style reforms, I think are the ones that are strongest for all. So give it a thought tonight. Let me tell you about the IRS investigation. We're conducting it with the Government Reform and Oversight Committee. Ways and Means started this more than 2.5 years ago. We heard from our local Tea Parties, conservative groups, the treatment they were getting at the IRS, their applications being delayed, the inappropriate questions they were being asked. We started then back on the IRS. By letter, in hearings, demanding answers. 2.5 years, they denied it all. We're not targeting anybody. 2 weeks, before it was made public, the acting commissioner was in front of our committee denying that there was any targeting whatsoever. We now know they lied to Congress, they covered up the program to the American public, and in the hearings we held, we've already revealed that it wasn't just a few rogue agents in Ohio, that already we know and have tracked back because of our investigation. This goes all the way to the top general counsel, the IRS. Only 1 of 2 people President Obama appoints in the IRS. The 5 areas of abuse that we're investigating, targeting conservative organizations, targeting conservative donors, sharing private taxpayer information with other agencies, with the media, with liberal interest groups. We are going to do the work to go all the way to the truth, wherever it leads us. My guess is to do this right, we've requested over 65 million documents, emails, communications, all this to get to the truth. We're conservatives, we go where the truth tells us. At the end of the day, not only are we going to hold these people accountable, our goal is to stop this from ever happening again. Because the IRS has a terrible amount of power as it is. The thought that it could silence you or target you because of your political beliefs is just wrong in this America. And so, yeah, we're going to find justice in this issue. We have to. We have to. It's up to these guys, however they want to do it, I'm game.
Yeah, my name is Bob Aiken, and I'm Bob Alden.
Hey, Bob.
Mike McCall used to be my rep at our circuit. And I got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
One on the IRS, you just brought that up.
Yeah.
Would y'all please get a select committee to study that, quit trying to do it now? Because it takes a lot of valuable time and things like that. Select committee, I believe, should concentrate on that. Number 2, on amnesty, in 87, I believe Reagan already dealt with that, right?
Yeah.
How many years ago was that, sir?
30 years.
Have we secured the border yet?
No, sir.
Why should we think y'all should do it now?
Unless you have,
I'll tell you what, will not happen, and especially under this president. So take up this immigration stuff, because we know where it's going to lead. It's going to go back. He only enforce the laws he wants to enforce, and his attorney general will back him up. Look at what's going on with Joe Arpaio. It's ridiculous.
I agree. Yep.
And I think what happens, the Republicans need to work on their message. They really do. Just like a lot of times I hear you on the radio with Ed Hindy or somebody like that. And you'll start off and my eyes will glaze over. When you start talking about what we have to do with Social Security and Medicare and reform these entitlements. All you have to say, sir, is number 1, we cannot afford Obamacare as a new entitlement program. Period. It either drives us broke or it goes broke. We're going to have to totally defund Social Security and Medicare.
Thanks. What was the first question you asked? No, actually it does. The select committee. Here's where, as a conservative, you don't want to do that. 1, because in a select committee, you basically turn the power over to a committee evenly divided between the Republicans and Democrats who may or may not have a lick of knowledge about the IRS, the tax code, or how to protect taxpayer information. Today, you have in the House one committee with Darrell Ice, as you know, Darrell's a bulldog. I mean, he's never going to let us. On the Ways and Means Committee, you actually have a committee that not only has jurisdiction and knows that whole agency, we're the only one whose chairman can actually look at, by law, private taxpayer information. And so we have, by law, the only means to when they say, we didn't share that taxpayer information, we can actually go look at that taxpayer information and tie it to the special interest group or the campaign. They shared it. So if you want a quick, thorough, deliberate investigation that isn't delayed or moved 3 or 4 years away, stick with the 2 tracks we have right now, because that's where we're going to get the truth. And the other thing is, for a while we had folks calling for a special prosecutor in this issue. Look, Eric Holder appoints a special prosecutor for this, who in their right mind would turn this investigation over to him. So we're not going to do it. We're going here. Why is he still there? You tell me. We've been trying to get him out of office from day one. So you need to tap out. And by the way, we're not IRS and Benghazi, fast and furious. Now we've just started a new investigation on the seal. These are not public scandals. They are not going away. They go to the heart of our democracy. So we're going to stay on it, whether they want it or not. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So live in the Woodlands?
Yeah, hey, Alan.
How you doing? Good. Our rights, our constitutional rights are being violated by the IRS, by TSA. We get molested when we go to the airport. That is bullcrap. DHS is putting a national police force together. For what? That's Obama bending the Constitution, violating our rights. When are you going to hold Holder and Obama accountable? They're passing laws that Congress is supposed to do. And you, about a month ago in the village here, you said, is this still America? I don't recognize this country. And I'm sick of what's going on. Yep. And I'm tired, but we have a constitution, nobody wants to follow it. And that's what you people in Washington need to do, is look at that constitution. I carry one with me, and I give them out to people that don't know what their rights are. And I know it's not all your fault, but you're our representative, yep. So we're holding you responsible.
Here's how we fight it. Thanks, Alan. Why don't you read what's on your t-shirt to everybody? Yeah.
Can you trust the government? Just ask an Indian.
Yeah. Here's how, Alan, here's how we're fighting on those issues, and I have to admit, it's not the battle. On the regulation overreach, on the DREAM Act, on the czars, on Eric Holder, on the EPA, on gun control efforts, the House has acted over and over again to defund them, to rein it in, to stop the new regulations. We've called for Holder's resignation. We've held him in contempt of Congress. And when the U.S. Attorney refused to pick it up, we funded it ourselves, just as we did the constitutional challenge to the Supreme Court on Obamacare. We, in defense of marriage, we House Republicans funded all of that to hold them accountable to the Constitution. I have to admit, almost all those bills and efforts are sitting in the Senate, and no one's fighting for it. And so, yeah, we got it's hard. It's just hard. I hope the courts would strike down a number of these. They didn't. I was hoping the last election would change the person in the White House. It didn't. And so this fight, my only point to you is do not give up on this fight. You can't, I know you're angry, I know it gets discouraging. Some people told me during our town halls they just feel hopeless because this is not the America that they hoped it would be. But they are counting on you and me to give up, to get discouraged, to get disheartened. They're counting on us to do it, and we absolutely cannot. I know these are tough times, and I know they are because I'm in the middle of these fights. But we just can't. Alan, the point is, we just got to keep holding them accountable, stay in the fight. If one thing doesn't work, we try another. Because at the end of the day, and I agree with the gentleman on messaging, we're horrible on it. But this is the future of the country we're fighting for. Period. We need to do a better job on the messaging. So, yes, sir.
Congressman Tom O'Halloran from Tomball.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
In 2008, we as a conservative pro-life bloc stood firm on our morals. We stood firm and wouldn't talk to, let alone endorse somebody that was not pro-life. What did he get us? Got us an Islamo-fascist Marxist in the White House and the most pro-abortion administration in U.S. history. Now, until this weekend, I was, with everybody in this room, I was saying defund it, shut it down. But over the weekend, I had a conversation with my good friend George Darcy. He talked some sense into me. If we defund it the way everybody's talking about doing, if we shut it down the way everybody's talking about doing, we're going to do the same thing we did in 08. We're going to tick off the middle, the moderates, the independents, who went to the other side and voted for the other folks. In 2016, we could easily lose 17 seats, and we're right back to Obama owning the White House, the Senate, and the Congress. We can't afford it. We need to defund it. We need to do all the things you're saying doing, but we can't shut it down because the stink of that will be on all of us, and we'll lose maybe 16. I'm not making any friends in this room, but you're doing the right thing, and we appreciate it. Some of us do.
Thank you very much. Can I expand one thing that you said that's really important? I'm thrilled the Senate's fighting because the House has been fighting by itself for a long time on this issue. I don't know if they can hold that. I don't know if they can convince Democrats to pass a funding bill without it. What I know is that if that doesn't work, if they can't hold it, we will send it to them. There's no doubt. We're going to give our guys a fighting chance over it. But if they can't deliver in some way, our point is keep fighting. You've got two major bills that can knock this thing back. The IRS and the worker mandate. They can buy us time, can push it back, give us more chances to defund, give us more chances to pick it apart. If it's death by 1,000 cuts or death by one cut, I don't really care how it gets done. My point is, if that fails, is everyone going to say, well, that was our one chance? That's it? It's not. My point is, we have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting on every front we get, on every weakness and bull. That's my only point. We got to keep fighting. This is not the way we got to do it. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Congressman. My name is Larry Deegan.
Yeah, hey, Larry.
That last comment, I just believe in character. You always do what's right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No matter what. United Methodist Church a while back, you had said that, what do you want me to do? Just always say no. So, and my question, or my answer to that, when I heard that is, if that's what your constituents want, yes, that is. You're our representative. And I guess my question to you is really about immigration, and it's at two levels. The first thing is, do you believe that you can actually come up with a solution? Yes, through attrition, absolutely. You've got to get rid of the magnets of the school programs, giving food stamps to people who aren't even paying into the system. I do agree with your fair tax, because that right there, as a small businessman, you said you support small businesses. If you're not part of this country, you've automatically given a 30% discount and you're making the same profit. HB1 visas, I work in the engineering field, and I can tell you right now, there are plenty of people here that can do those jobs. Like you said, we do need to train them. They're bringing people over from other countries, and I'm training them. Why wouldn't we train Americans for those jobs? And just to wrap it up is, I hope that you don't vote for an amnesty and sell out the American workers, because at that point, if you're rewarding people who are breaking a law, what law is okay to break at that point?
I think last man standing. Well, yeah. Let me, any other issues you want to talk about? Look, we're executive orders. Again, we're in the same fight that we are on all the regulation, all the Dream Act, all that. We fight back immediately in the House. Harry Reid blocks it. We don't get it through the Senate. The president just does the math. And that's how he's able to act with impunity on all of this. So we look for every opportunity in spending bills, any must-pass legislation, to be able to stop it, pull it back, again, to do everything we can. We're just in that boxing match. We are a little outnumbered, but you got to keep fighting. I mean, you just got to do it. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, what the question was, what's the possibility that the White House delays the mandate on workers so that it helps him in the 2014 election? I'll tell you, if they actually really cared about the people they were trying to supposedly help, they delay this thing forever. It is not ready. It's wrong. It's driving up costs. It's dragging the economy. But I don't think their ego will allow them to do it. We did pick up 20-some Democrats on our measure to knock both the pillars off the foundation, both the employer mandate and the worker mandate. Again, it's the single most unpopular part of that law. I think we need to keep kicking that thing off. My view, again, delay, fund, repeal, replace, whatever it takes to get us to 2016 to pull it out. Thin or thick, to pull it out. I think that's the strategy. And I know some of you tonight are not happy with fighting on every council in Obamacare that the fund ought to be it. The reason I disagree is because I know this law. I've looked at it every way in the world. The only way to completely stop it is to repeal it, because the way it's written. If we can't repeal it, we fight to defund it. If we can't fight to defund it, we fight to delay it. If we can't delay all of it, we delay the key parts. On and on and on until we get the day we can pull it out. So, my point is, we all want exactly the same thing. How we get to it, I'll tell you, I don't care. I just want to get to it. I mean, and I'll back anything it takes to get it. So I think we agree 100% on ripping that thing out. We may have some differences on the best strategy to do it. My point is, I'm not stopping fighting on Obama. I'm just not going to stop it. Period. So, really, thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you for being here, for asking your questions. I wish we could go on and get all of them answered. I don't know if you'll stay afterwards and answer a few. Hopefully you'll be able to address them, or the staff in the back also is a way to communicate. We meet every Tuesday over in our office in Suite 402. Hopefully we'll see you next week for Dr. Ted Seago. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Good night.